close and the storm is so big, it is producing the strong risk of rip currents, the high risk of rip currents, the very high surf, and then again later this week, even some rough surf. Right now it has winds of 115 miles per hour, moving very slowly to the northwest at about 7 miles per hour. Latest thinking is it may briefly weaken to a Category 2 hurricane as it stays off the coasts of the Bahamas, but then re-strengthen to a Cat 3 right before it starts to curve out into the Atlantic. So while it's not going to make landfall in the United States, still going to give us those impacts along our coastline here in central Florida. Coming up in a few minutes, we'll talk about a couple of other tropical waves in the Atlantic. Yeah, high surf and a high risk of rip currents pretty much all week long. And it's all thanks to Erin, which is not expected to directly make landfall here in central Florida or the United States, but it is going to provide us with rip currents pretty much up and down the east coast of the United States. And there are two other tropical waves we're watching. This tropical wave in the eastern Atlantic could become a tropical depression later on this week, if not this weekend. Good news is right now our latest European and GFS models both keeping this in the Atlantic and not making its way into Florida or in central Florida. But if you recall the past couple of days, GFS has been going back and forth between the Gulf and the Atlantic. Right now it is favoring the Atlantic, which is good news. So we'll continue to monitor this tropical wave. Coming up in a few minutes, we'll talk about today's local forecast.
Make sure you're staying safe if you head out to the water today.
Yeah, you know, this is something that you normally see. A lot of people tend to go to the coast, especially surfers, when you've got something that's happening off of the coast, but it can be very dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, now through Thursday evening, we're talking about high surf, and even on Friday, rough surf as well. And then all week long, it's dangerous rip currents. So our coast high risk of rip currents. Tomorrow, we're looking at seas right around 10 to 15 feet, breaking waves of 6 to 8 feet. And then on Thursday, 7 to 11 foot waves and breaking waves of about 5 to 6 feet. So it is going to be very rough out there along our coastline, and it's all thanks to Hurricane Erin. Now, Erin again is not going to make landfall here in central Florida, but it is going to help to stir up our surf. It pulls away by Thursday, returning our forecast back to normal in terms of a 40 to 50% coverage of rainfall, but our surf still stays on the high side, even bringing some tropical storm force winds to parts of the Carolinas. And then by Friday, we're all clear in terms of the main impacts of Erin moving away from our area, though still rough surf is going to be quite a concern for Friday along our coast. You could already see those waves this morning from our tower camera network out in New Smyrna Beach, but a gorgeous start in terms of the sky. We have mostly clear conditions, a really nice sunrise, and I'm only tracking just a couple of showers making their way from Melbourne over towards West Melbourne and along the 192 I-95 kind of intersection there. So what we're looking at least this morning is mostly sunny conditions, maybe 1 or 2 isolated showers along our coastline. And then this afternoon, up to a 30% coverage of rainfall, basically meaning mostly sunny conditions, a few passing showers in the late afternoon hours, but otherwise relatively dry and warm with our highs today into the upper 80s to mid 90s. Now, I want to take you back to the tropics because we are watching this tropical wave where a tropical depression could form later on this week, if not this weekend. Now, good news is both the European and GFS models not really picking up on this moving into the Gulf. However, we're still going to have to watch. It's still too early to tell exactly if this will make it into the Atlantic, just because it's not a tropical depression yet. And the GFS model has been going back between the Gulf and the Atlantic pretty much all week long. So we're going to continue to monitor that. But right now, both the European and GFS showing it staying out to sea, almost a similar pattern to where Erin was. Then we have Invest 99L. This is tagged as an invest area because it has a really good burst of convection as it rolled off the coast of Africa and is holding on to that convection right now. But there is some limited development later on this week. Right now, only giving about a 30% chance of development in the next 2 and 7 days.
Was Kellianne?
Yeah, so high surf advisory now in effect all the way through Thursday evening. And we have a high risk of rip currents as well. That's going to continue all the way through Friday, and that's up and down our coastline. So if you are going to our local beaches, please be aware of that. And it's all thanks to Hurricane Erin. Erin right now winds of 115 miles per hour, moving pretty slowly to the northwest at about 7 miles per hour. So the center of that storm just off the coast of the Bahamas, where they have still tropical storm watches and warnings in effect. And now in the United States, especially along the Outer Banks area of North Carolina, a tropical storm watch in effect. Now, it's not going to make landfall in North Carolina, but because it gets so close to the Carolinas Outer Banks area, they're going to be dealing with some pretty gusty winds. We'll talk about our forecast back here at home, and we'll also have a look at a couple of other tropical waves in the Atlantic. in Florida or the United States, but it is going to bring some rough surf, high surf, and a high risk of rip currents pretty much all week long. Erin right now is a Category 3 hurricane with winds of 115 miles per hour, pretty much bordering that Category 2, Category 3 status. So it is going to briefly drop to a Cat 2, then re-strengthen to a Cat 3 by Wednesday afternoon, and then pull away. But do know that we're still going to be dealing with rough surf and a high risk of rip currents throughout much of the week. Then we have this tropical wave in the eastern Atlantic that could become a tropical depression later on this week. Good news is latest GFS and European forecast showing this staying out into the Atlantic once it gets to the Windward Islands, gradually lifting north and staying out in the Atlantic. So we'll continue to monitor this for any sort of development. Back at home, we're watching for some rainfall today. We'll have those details coming up in a few minutes. 7 to 11 feet and breaking waves about 5 to 6 feet. So that's why we have a high surf advisory up and down our east coast all the way through Thursday evening. And we're still going to be dealing with rough surf through Friday as well. It's all thanks to Hurricane Erin. It's moving very slowly at about 7 miles per hour to the northwest, but the winds at that center are about 115 miles per hour. Now, Erin's not going to make landfall in the United States, but it's going to get close enough to not just stir up our surf, but also bring us pretty gusty conditions. Check out these wind gusts as we look towards this evening along our coastline, gusting around 20 to 25 miles per hour. Erin continues to slowly lift north and then eventually to the northeast tomorrow afternoon, but we could see wind gusts of around 20 to 30 miles per hour along our coastline. Then by Friday, not as gusty, and that's all thanks to Erin pulling away. Right now, though, it is certainly a beautiful start. Lots of sunshine, just a couple of clouds, but that surf is definitely rough already this morning. A lot of us are dry, just a couple of showers in parts of coastal Brevard County with another batch of rainfall right off the coast of Micco trying to make its way onshore. That's why I have an isolated rain chance this morning with a better chance for rainfall arriving this afternoon around 3 and 4. But keep in mind today, a lot of us are going to have mostly sunny conditions, just a few passing showers. So not everyone today is going to see rainfall. It's just going to be about a 30% coverage of rain with our highs into the upper 80s to mid 90s, feeling once again like the triple digits. And same thing tomorrow, upper 80s to mid 90s with feels like temperatures in the triple digits. So again, Erin's not going to make its way into central Florida, but it's going to provide us with those gusty conditions along our coastline and some high surf and a high risk of rip currents. As Erin pulls away by Thursday, we return back to our typical summertime pattern of afternoon showers and thunderstorms. So up to about a 40% coverage of today, a few isolated showers along our coastline with a mix of sun and clouds this afternoon and a few passing showers around 3 and 4 o'clock up to a 30% coverage. High temperatures reach the low and mid 90s. Another round of 30% coverage of rainfall tomorrow, increasing rain starting Thursday.
And taking a final check of our roads here this morning, this is a look at I-4 heading into the City Beautiful with the east and westbound lanes. Traffic moving nicely out there this morning. Quickly, let's take a look at some of our drive times here